Kiddushin.
Start with the chazaras on Gittin test.
Okay. Test. Right?
Yeah, the last two.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just get that on my. Okay. Test. Boom. The thing you want, something's wrong. I put the wrong place. Gittin test.
Test. The last two Mishnahs in Gittin.
Yeah, just this. I don't understand. There we go. Okay. If she was reported to in the town to be married, she is married to be divorced. She is divorced as long as there is no qualifications. What is a qualification? If they said so and so divorced his wife on a condition, or he withdrew her condition to her and there was doubt if it was close to her, close to him, this is a qualification. Beit Shammai says a man may not divorce his wife unless he found her in an act of adultery. As it says, because he found her in an adulterous thing, Beit Hillel said, even if he burnt his food, as it says, because he found her in an adulterous thing, Rabbi Akiva says, even if he found another more beautiful than her, as it says, and it comes to pass that she does not find favor in his eyes. Okay.
Okay, Gittin, and one Mishnah in Kiddushin.
I thought we did that yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. We did Chazara.
All right. Oh, my mind is so going. If you come home and a woman has burnt your food, is that considered divorce? Or just,
Yeah, that is according to Beis Hillel, that's grounds for divorce. Yeah, I mean, remember,
you don't want to bring that.
Remember when we talk about grounds for divorce, according to Torah law, a man can marry and marriage has to have the woman's consent, but divorce is entirely up to the man. It's only the Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershon that has the woman requiring to consent to divorce, and even he baked into that if she refuses to accept the divorce, then he can go out looking for the Hetzer Meir Rabbanim to take a second wife.
Yeah. I was just thinking if you put it somewhere else, people, like people have those signs in the kitchen, the laws of the kitchen, the woman has the first right, and then and the last one is the woman. This guy puts up the things is, if my food is burnt, that's it. We're done. That's finished. We're finished. All right. A woman is acquired in 3 ways. She acquires herself in 2 ways. She is acquired with money and with a document or with cohabitation. With money, Beis Shammai says, with a dinner or with something worth a dinner. Beis Hillel, however, says with a putra or with something worth a putra. How much is a putra? One in Italian is she acquires herself with a get or with the details of her husband. The Yavama is acquired with cohabitation and acquires herself with kalitza or with the death of the Yavam.
Okay. Eved Ivri. So now, once we've been talking about acquiring, so we started by talking about a woman because we're talking about Maseches Kiddushin, but the Mishna, as it frequently does, takes a tangent and goes into acquisitions of other things, people, whatever. And so this whole first parak deals with the method of acquisition of various articles. Eved Ivri. So an Eved Ivri is a Jew who has become a slave. Now there are 2 ways that a Jewish man can become a slave. One is if he finds that he's impoverished, and the only way that he can make ends meet is by selling himself as a slave. 2 is if he stole, and he can't repay. So he stole. He gets caught. The court wants him to repay, possibly kefil, possibly arba v'chamisha, and he doesn't have the wherewithal to pay for it. So then the court will sell him, and basically whoever buys him, the money goes to the court, and the court will repay the person who was stolen from. Okay, so now, but now on the other side of the transaction is the guy who's buying the Eved Ivri. Yeah, okay, so how does he acquire the Eved Ivri? The kesef ubishtar. Same and very similar to a woman that he hands over money either to the Eved himself, who is who's selling. If he's selling himself because it's impoverished, then he gives him the money, and now there's a transaction. He's now an eved for 6 years down. Okay,
6
and
years.
so an
6
eved ivri, the stam period for an eved ivri is 6 years, and at the end of 6 years, he automatically goes free. Okay, and that's not kosher to the Shemitah, by the way. It can be. It could be 6 years, including the Shemitah. Because
and in the within that 6 years, he has paid back, or that's his payback is that he's done the 6 years of being a slave.
He's done. He's not being paid while he's being an eved, except that the master has got rules on how he looks after him.
Right.
But he's now an eved. Okay. But an eved ivri is a Jew in everything. He's completely chayav in mitzvahs, and it can be an aid and whatever. He doesn't lose his status as a Jew at all. He's just he now has to work for somebody. Okay.
Right.
And he's acquired with money or with a shtar. When if he's selling himself, then he writes out a shtar and gives it to his master, saying, "Here I'm hereby a slave to you for 6 years." Or else, if it's a beis din, then the beis din will write out a shtar and say that Ploni is sold to you for 6 years. Okay.
So he can go to anybody that he wishes and do it and make a star and say, I'm going to work for you for the 6 years.
Yeah.
I owe money. And
it's basically a financial obligation. It's a work and financial obligation that turns him into an eved ivri. Okay. The kones atzmo, and how does he get released? B'shanim, either with years. In other words, he finishes his 6 years and he goes out free. Uba yovel, if the 6 years overlap a yovel year, then he goes free no matter what. Okay. Uba gira on kesef, or if he pays back the amount of money. So if he was paid, let's say 1,000 dinars for his 6 years. And meanwhile, he's had some income, or he got a Yerusha. So he's worked 3 of the 6 years, and now he's got 500 dinars in his possession, and he wants to go free. Then he can give back the 500 dinars to his adon and say, I've given you 3 years. Here's half of what you paid for me. I'm gone. Okay. So just like any other Jew, an eved ivri can make acquisitions on his own. It's not like, as we'll see in the next Mishnah, about an eved Knani who has no personal rishus. Okay. Yisera alav ama ha'ivriya. So then there's also the slave girl, a Jewish girl who like women do not get sold for gneva. That would be beneath their dignity. So even if a woman stole and she can't pay, she doesn't get sold. However, a Jewish girl can be sold as we don't like to use the word slave, but as a maid servant, specifically for the purposes of marriage. So her father can give her to somebody else as an amma before she has become bas mitzvah, because he has intention either for the person who's selling her or his son to marry her. Okay. So now she's konas atzma b'simanim. So as soon as she becomes a bogeres and she hasn't been given in marriage yet, she automatically goes free without any payment. So the expectation of the amma ivriya is that she's supposed to be given in marriage. If the marriage didn't happen, and she's now grown up, boom, she's free by herself. And nirtzan. Now remember, there's a case of an eved ivri who's really enjoying himself as an eved ivri. He loves his master, he loves his work, he loves his master is also entitled to give him a shifcha kananis to marry and have children. So that's what he's allowed to do. Saying, take this woman, this shifcha. She's not Jewish. She's sort of part Jewish, and you can live with her and have children, and your children will be avadim, because of course the lineage follows the mother. Right. So he's living with her, and this is the one case where a Jew is allowed to live with a non-Jew.
I was going to ask about that. That's kind of like, that was the
Right.
one thing that Hashem did not want at
Well,
all.
because she's sort of in that twilight zone, and Eved Knani is not a goy, because he's also chayav in the same mitzvahs as a woman is, but he's also not a Jew. He can't be counted for a minyan. He can't be an aid. Okay, so this is a case where the master is allowed to give him a so-called non-Jewish wife. Okay, and he's happy with this. He likes the situation. He's got a good family situation. He was single before. He's now got a wife and children. And even if they're Knanim and whatever, Avadim Knanim and in different status, but he's happy. So he can go and get himself and say, I want to stay. And they take him and put his ear against the doorpost, and they bore a hole in his ear, and he becomes an Eved until the Yovel, because the Yovel will give him no matter what.
Is this a decree? Is this decree a rabbinic decree? Doesn't sound like it would be something.
That's in the Torah. That's absolutely in the Torah. That's right it's in Parshas Mishpatim.
I know the ear and all that. I know all that's in there, but I'm just wondering if it comes back, to a rabbinic decree where they did this. It just seems kind of strange.
What would be
that he can marry a non-Jew, in this case.
Oh. No, actually, it's learned out from the Psukim that he says, I love my wife. What do you mean, I love my wife and children? He says these are the reasons that the Torah gives why he would want to stay being an Eved. And one of them is because he's got a wife. And so, what do you mean? Is your wife Jewish or not Jewish? It learns out that it must be that his master gave him a slave wife.
Which Pasha is this?
I think it is Mishpatim.
Sounds like Mishpatim.
Yeah.
Sounds like Mishpatim. Okay. All right.
Okay. Right. And so the Nirtza is the one who's got the hole in his ear. He is acquired with that boring of the hole. But Konez Atzmo the Yovel, and he only returns to his own domain when the Yovel comes. So if he did it at the beginning of the Yovel, and he's got another 40 years to go before the Yovel comes, such is life. He's an Eved forever until the Yovel comes. And also if his master dies, because his condition that he gets of his condition of service is that he loves his master. He doesn't necessarily love his master's son. So an Eved Ivri does not, who's a Nirtzai, does not pass on through Yerusha. Whereas the first 6 years, the Eved Ivri can be passed on through Yerusha. Okay, because he's got a debt to work off, and the debt transfers from the father to the son. But the Nirtzai is an emotional bond. He loves his master. He loves his situation, and therefore he elects himself to stay on. When that changes, immediately he's lost his reasoning to stay behind, and now he's not obligated to serve the son if he doesn't want to. Okay. Now we move on to Eved Knani. Eved Knani nikne bekesef b'shtar of chazaka. So there's another way that we're introducing over here, instead of which is kind of analogous to bia. Remember, the woman is nikne bekesef shtar of bia, and the Eved Knani is kesef shtar of chazaka. Chazaka means making use of him. Okay, but the non-Jewish slave can be acquired on a slave market. Okay, it could be bought from somebody else. Okay, so it could be with the transfer of money, could be with the transfer of a shtar. I hand over this eved to your rishos, or with chazaka, where he takes the eved and says, listen, I want you to give me a back massage, or I want you to dig a hole for me. So as soon as he gives the eved something concrete to do, and the eved does it, that's he's made use of him, and now the transfer takes place. Okay. And how does an Eved Knani leave his slavery? Because the standard situation of an Eved Knani is that he is his Jewish master's property, basically. And if the master dies, then he passes the Yerusha to the children. So now what happens? First of all, when he gets freed, he's not just like going free, he becomes a full Jew once he becomes freed also. Okay. So how does he acquire himself? The kesef al yidei acherim. He can redeem himself with money, but it has to be somebody else who pays the money. Why? because the Eved Kanani has the property that his hand is like the hand of his master. So if he's walking in the street and he sees a pile of money that somebody lost and it's a Metzia, so he says, yes, my money. He picks it up, immediately it becomes his master's money. So he can't go to his master and say, hey, I've got the money to redeem myself. Here it is. And the master says, thank you very much for the money. It's my money. Okay, so he's in a pickle over there. But what he could do if he's a clever Eved and he sees a pile of money that somebody else that he can pick up, he could ask his friend who he trusts, listen, there's this pile of money over there. I can't pick it up myself. Can you pick it up for me, please, and take it and redeem me? So that he could do. So somebody else can pick up the money and they can give it to the master and say, here, I want to redeem this slave. Okay. But when it comes to a shtar, he can receive it himself, says Rabbi Meir. Right? So a shtar is where the master writes to him, much like a get. He says, "Hare at la'atzmach." You are now in your own domain. It's a shtar of shichrur, and the Eved can pick it up and his freedom and his hand returned to him at once. So much. You remember in Gittin, when the husband gives it to his wife, normally also her metzia belongs to her husband, but when she's receiving a get, immediately her get and her own domain over what she takes return at once. Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Meir. So bekesef al yidei atzmo uveshtar al yidei acherim. It said that with kesef he can redeem himself by himself, or b'shtar al yidei acherim, and so it's an interesting lashon that they choose there, that the shtar with other people. It just has to be other people's money. So what the Chachamim are saying that to Rabbi Meir, when it comes to money, if somebody else wants to give him a gift, if he accepted the gift himself, it would automatically belong to his master. But what somebody else can say to him is, this money is for you to go and redeem yourself on condition that your master has no rishus in it. So and then they can give it to him al tanai, and then he can go back and give the money to his master and say, this money was given to me al tanai that you have no rishus in it. I'm giving it to you to redeem myself. So Chachamim say that's valid, but Rabbi Meir says that tanai just doesn't work. Okay, that's why it has to be done by somebody else according to Rabbi Meir. And the shtar al yidei acherim, that means he can have other people receive the shtar for him. Now, this is an argument about whether it's beneficial for an Eved to be freed or not, because Rabbi Meir says being an Eved is a good situation. Your master has to feed you, clothe you, look after you, and everything, and life is chaim shelanu tutim. Life is a bed of roses. You don't have to worry about anything. So for the master to give it to somebody else and say, yeah, I'm giving this to you on behalf of my Eved, the shtar shichrur. So maybe the Eved doesn't want to receive it, and you can't give somebody do something that somebody doesn't want without them being present to acknowledge it. According to Rabbi Meir, according to Chachamim, it's a benefit for somebody to be freed. Who wants to be a slave? So they said that yes, a person can you can be mazaki somebody else when it's to their benefit, without their consent. So if somebody else receives the shtar on behalf of an Eved, it's good. So certainly on his own bet. So that's another argument between Chachamim and Rabbi Meir.
You said before, I hope I have this right. You said before that when he's freed, whether he freed himself or whatever it is, when he's freed, he becomes a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
Does he have to go through? But he wasn't a Jew before.
First of all, he's already been to mikveh, and bris milah. When you take an Eved Knan, he has to be mild.
Okay.
That's from the time of Avraham Avinu. Whatever any Eved that a Jew buys, who's an Eved, has to have a bris milah, and he goes to mikveh to become an Eved Kanani, because an Eved Kanani is a step up from a goy.
That's what I was going to ask you, because
yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay. Bahema gasa niknes b'masira. Now we're talking about animals. How do you acquire animals? Okay. Behemoth gasa, large livestock animals. First, hang on, just a little bit of background. There are three basic ways of taking possession of metaltanim, of movable assets. So there's hagba, take the object, lift it up 3 tvachim. Some say 1 tefach. Okay, that's the strongest kinyan, because it doesn't need to be in anyone's particular shus. As soon as you pick it up, no matter where you are, it's yours. I mean, assuming that there was a contract involved. Then there's mashicha, which is moving the object. There you have to move it. Is it Dalet Amas? Or but mashicha has to be done in a kind of a neutral territory. You can't do a mashicha in somebody else's property. So if you're buying a large object, that needs to be pulled in order to take possession of it. Let's say a washing machine. So you go into somebody to buy their second-hand washing machine, you're pulling it out from under their sink and whatever and pulling it through the kitchen. That's not a mashiach because it's all in their rishus. It has to move out of their property, and once you've taken it out of their property and done a mashiach on sort of on the side of the rishus harabim, that's not that's now a kinyan. Once you pulled it there, that's now yours. Okay. And then there is masira, when you've got something that's so large that you can't actually move it. Like let's say somebody buys a ship. Okay, how do you buy it? You have to take some sort of attachment of the ship, like I don't know, a rope that's attached to the ship or that's used to moor it, right? And the owner takes it and passes over the rope to the buyer, and now that's called masira, and now the boat belongs to the buyer. Okay. In general, something that can be purchased by hagbar, so that, you're selling a cell phone.
Right.
The kinyan has to be done with hagbar because that's what's customarily done with with small things. You pick them up. So you can't do mashicha to make a kinyan on a cell phone. Okay, but if you have something that normally done by mashicha because it's kind of heavy, but somebody actually picks it up, does hagbar, that's still good because hagbar is stronger than mashicha, and the same goes that mashicha works for something that's normally done with masira. So now, behemoth gasa is a large animal. Nicknamed masira. It's you have to purchase it by it may be purchased by handing over the reins because it's not something. Sometimes a cow will refuse to move. You can't just drag the cow. Okay, so what do? You take it. You take something that it normally wears, like the rope that's used to lead it. Pass it over. That's a kinyan. But daka b'hagbar, but a small animal like a goat can be that's done by hagbar, by lifting it, because it's a small thing. Okay. Divrei Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar. So Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar say that a small animal has to be done with hagbar. It can't be done with any other thing. So you buy a flock of goats, 100 goats, you got to go lifting each one. Nah, but pulling it is good enough. So in other words, even if you and mashicha doesn't have to be your physical force pulling it. It could just be that you're taking it and leading it out, or telling it to go, and like clapping your hands so that it should move, and that's also considered a mashicha. Okay. These have been a lot of. There's been a lot of detail in these Mishnah, so I'm afraid we're not going to get to our chazaras today. I've got to run.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, what are you sorry about? We did some good learning today. Okay, so I'll leave the chazaras to you.
Have a good day. Okay, thank you.
Good day. Bye.